It seems pretty apparent that life in community on mission is messy, but it's a beautiful mess. And just like we see people in messy situations differently when they're our family members than when they're someone else that's not, once we start to see and treat everyone like part of the family, our heart response to this glorious mess will shift too. Like I've said many times before, this is not the way we live because we're supposed to. We live this way and treat others this way because we get to. We get to love them and pursue them and treat them the way God does. And that shows them what He's like. God is pursuing this relationship of trust with us and with them, and He uses us to pursue them. It's beautiful. It's powerful.
Welcome to the Everyday Disciple Podcast, where you'll learn how to live with greater intentionality and an integrated faith that naturally fits into every area of life. In other words, discipleship as a lifestyle. This is the stuff your parents, pastors, and seminary professors probably forgot to tell you. And now, here's your host, Caesar Kalinowski.
Hey, good to be back with you. Welcome to another edition of the Everyday Disciple Podcast. Thanks for joining me. Hope your day's going great. Mine is. I'm still kind of buzzing from yesterday. Tina and I were invited to go to baptism of the oldest daughter of some friends of ours, and I love baptisms, and I love seeing my young little sister make her public profession of her faith. So a little shout out to the Proctors and to their oldest daughter, Bridget, B, as we call her, and it was such a privilege to be there. It was a bit of an intimate little situation and fun and just kind of some close people, and we were invited to be a part of that, and it was wonderful. So what a great thing to see a young little sister commit herself to the mission and to Christ early in life. It was awesome. So anyway, having a blast with that. It was such a cool thing. Let me read a couple of reviews that have come in for the podcast, just to encourage you to maybe do the same thing, sort of pay it forward. That helps other people know what the show is about. This one says, Back to Mission. It was by M.D. Edwards. Jesus gave the church one mission, and this is a podcast that will always call us back to that mission. Not through guilt, but the grace of the gospel. Keep up the awesome work. It's very encouraging. Well, thanks there, M.D. Edwards. Appreciate that. Here's another one that came in from Meadowbrook MC. This is a must-have podcast. 5 stars also. Thank you. And they list it out. It's a little numerical little thing. 1, real-life practical ways to begin living in community on mission. 2, the big 3 is genius. You have something in hand that summarizes the podcast. Awesome. And then 3rd, they said, finally, something that's 25 to 30 minutes in length, perfect for when driving to and from work or doing errands. So that's kind of what I shoot for, 25 to 30 minutes. If you're a regular listener, you know that sometimes I can shoot a little longer than that, especially when I have really good guests on and we just get rocking. I hope you'll subscribe on whatever platform you listen to the podcast on and review it if they allow you to do that, star it, whatever. But if you subscribe, and you can download them that way, you don't miss out on episodes. If you need a new place to check out that type of thing where you can see all the different places the podcast is available, you can go to everydaydisciple.com/subscribe, and it'll take you to a real cool little page with a whole bunch of stuff. Like, it's got all the links that you'll ever need. Okay? And before we get rolling on today's topic, I just want to mention, if you're interested in learning a full framework for discipleship and missional living in everyday life, like a step-by-step, we'll walk with you, I want to talk to you about that. If you want to grow in your gospel fluency in everyday life, I would love to set up a short Zoom call to get to know you better, answer any questions you have, and tell you all about the coaching and mentorship that Tina and I do as a couple for couples. All right? You can check that out, get some more information, and contact us to set up that Zoom call if you'd like. You can go to everydaydisciple.com/coaching. everydaydisciple.com/coaching. Now today, in just a little bit here, I'm debuting a new segment here as part of the podcast. It's called Something to Think About. And in Something to Think About, I'm going to share just a little short thought on something that always sort of seems to come up within Christianity and our faith, but it's not been ever quite right. And I'll just maybe debunk those things, and it'll give you something to think about. I'll be back with that at the end, right after I do the big three. Now, let's get to today's topic. Today's topic is helping people feel like part of the family. And I have talked about this before in different ways. There was an episode 157, number 157, where Tina and I were on together. Heath interviewed us. That was a really earlier episode of the podcast. And then in episode number 189, I get into all the theology behind why we really do get to see everyone as family, because that's how God sees us, all as his kids. Because some people push back and say, no, it's just Christians that are our family. Well, not according to Scripture, not according to God himself. And I won't go deep into that right now. If you want that whole I go deep on it in episode 189. Go ahead and look back for that. But I thought I wanted to talk about this again today from a little different angle, because with so many Christians and churches doing more home-based micro churches and neighborhood-focused expressions, we just talked about that a couple episodes back, it made me wonder, how are we treating people? How are we making them feel when they're with us in our homes or anywhere else? Because the church has gotten real good at setting up the worship service sort of experience, but we primarily sit in rows in silence. And now, as people are moving outward, I really hope that people are being treated like family, not like guests. And so I want to talk about that again. And I have to tell you right at the front end here, until you start to believe that God sees you as his kids, as his family, you're going to have a hard time treating others like family. Yeah, that's how it works. We really, deep in our hearts, have to believe what God says is true of us, that we're his dearly loved sons and daughters, that we have nothing to prove, nothing to earn. We're part of his forever family. We can come to him with anything, everything we need. He owns everything. We have authority and privilege as sons and daughters of the King. When we start believing that, and that God sees everyone else that way, and some of his kids aren't redeemed, or they don't accept that free gift, well, they're still his kids. It's just like, look at the prodigal son story, right? That was still his son. Couldn't wait to get him back home. So until we really believe that that's how God sees us and sees everyone else, we're going to have a hard time treating people like family. And when we have them over, we'll treat them like guests. And I'm going to go deep into that. And I think on top of that, before we get rolling too deep here, we really need to get rid of this who's in, who's out mentality. That worried about who's a Christian, who's not, who goes to our church, who doesn't, all that. It's not serving us. It's not serving the church. It's not treating others the way that God treats us and everyone else. And I just want to ask you to pray about that. If that's sort of been your upbringing or the way your church experience has taught you, this whole who's in, who's out mentality, we need to lose that. God is pursuing everyone to be a part of his family, and we get to treat them the way God sees them, as his kids, and love them and invite them to a place at his table. Now, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share with you a coaching session that Tina and I recently had with one of our cohorts, one of our coaching cohorts. And in that, we're explaining to the folks who are living on mission and starting to walk in the ways of Jesus in everyday life with people and neighbors and people of peace about why we want to treat people like family, not like guests. And we give them a bunch of ideas. And I want you to listen all the way to the end, because they ask some questions too that are really good, and they may be questions that you would have. All right? So let's take a listen to this, kind of a peek inside of one of our coaching sessions, and then I'll come back at the end to give you a few comments, give you the big three, and we'll look at that new segment, something to think about. Here we go. We want to sort of take the next logical sort of just tipping in that family identity aspect. And that's the one that trips us up a lot. And a lot of people don't like to serve, but they kind of feel like we're supposed to. And so they'll just swallow hard and do it, or whatever. But the family one does start to trip our trigger. Oh, this is what I was going to say, Cammie, when you were talking about people are like, don't have a healthy sense of family. That's going to be almost always everybody, because no one had a perfect family. Even like, okay, yourself, you came from a great set of parents and all, but I'm just guessing they're not perfect. But the point is, everybody's got some brokenness there, but some people had really bad. And we get to redefine, what does life look like when God's your dad and Jesus is your brother and you're empowered by God's own Spirit? And people go, I don't know. but I'm getting a little whiff of it. I'm getting a little sense of it the more we hang out with you guys. And there's the openness to go, hey, we're growing in this too. You want to grow in this with us? See, so it levels things out. It's not weird. It's not some benevolent stooping. I use that term, like sometimes as Christians, that's how we treat people, is like we kind of know we should or supposed to. So from our lofty place of wealth and privilege, we sort of benevolently stoop down and help them. But that's not, Jesus came, right? He put on the robe, the scratchy robe and the beard and sandals, and he lived among them. It was just, he was one of them, right? He worked his job there. He ate what they ate. He cooked fish on the beach. It was all the normalcy of that. And we get to do that too. Come follow me, walk with me, as he opened their eyes to life in the kingdom and under the power of the Holy Spirit. We get to do the same thing. Now, as we look at this flow out of being family, like God seeing his kids. Now, some folks, and we can go as deep as you want, some folks, and I've had more conversations about this that I can recall, but I've gotten pushbacks. I've had people call me in and I have to sit down with their elders and explain what we mean. They're like, no, only Christians are part of the family. Only Christians are, and they lose their ish over it, right? All hinged on one verse generally, that, it's this that are called the children of God. The truth is, those are the redeemed children of God. Those are the people that know they are. But God sees everybody as their kids. And there's only about 1 billion verses that say that. You know what I mean? But that weird exclusionary who's in, who's out mentality that the church always has, because they had the wrong gospel. It was a gospel about some weird conversion event and Jesus in your heart prayer, the one Jesus never did before. And so that was the marker. Well, who's done it? Who's in, who's out? Who's in, who's out? And the church I grew up in, once you said the Jesus in your heart prayer and raised your hand, I see that hand. Once you did that, then you were like, they moved you on. It was like, next. And there was no discipleship. It was just like, next, check the box. Who's in, who's out? Then, depending on your denomination or church upbringing, and a lot of churches are still this way. I know it might seem hard to believe what I'm about to say, but they're based on who's in and who's out. They get super exclusionary, where instead of being a missionary people, a priesthood of saints, a kingdom of priests to show the world what God's like, they're like, no, you have to separate yourself from the unclean. Who's in, who's out? And maybe that seems weird to you, but I'm telling you, it's probably still 2/3 of the church in the world, where there's a real heavy separation and exclusionary, because you don't want to get sin on you. You might get their sin on you.
Yeah, I only homeschool my kids or send them to Christian school. They couldn't possibly go to public school and be with all those sinning kids, and
we've had parents sit and sob with us of like, there's just these kids in the neighborhood and they're real rough and they swear and I don't want my kids around them. Okay, I understand. However, we exist, our family, this is sort of like our family, insignia on the family crest. We exist for the sake of others unto God's glory. And God sees everybody as his offspring. We get to as well. Now, we also get to treat people like family. And we wanted to talk a little bit about treating people like family, not like guests. As you build out community, as you start to engage your people of peace in invitation and challenge, right? What's the next appropriate invitation to access to our time and relational challenge? What's the next move relationally together? As we do that, we want to be treating people in our lives like family, not like guests when they're around. Do you know the difference of like when you've been somewhere and you're a guest there and they're doing a great job, like they're taking care of everything, but you're a guest there, be it a hotel lobby, like a 5-star hotel resort when you go to Disney, because that's what they specialize in, church lobby, someone's house. Do you know the difference, the feeling internally when you're being treated like a guest versus like family? We want to treat people the way God sees them and treats them, and we want to treat people like family, not like guests. So
that ruffles a lot of people, especially in the South, the whole Southern hospitality thing.
Perfect house, perfect,
Yeah, you got to have your house perfect, and then you don't everything's about keeping, saving face and keeping it, everything looking good on the outside, to the point where you don't actually invite people even into your front door. Like you'd sit on the porch with them at first.
So where a lot of porch culture came from.
till you got to a certain thing, and then you could have them inside. But then still, you got to make sure the inside's perfect. And since it's not perfect most of the time, that doesn't happen very often. C's mom was from the South, from Savannah, Georgia, and she had a lot of this in her, and it drove me crazy because I grew up in the South too. I knew what she was struggling with, but
she wasn't exclusionary.
She wasn't exclusionary,
but she treated everybody like a guest.
Yeah. And so she, you could barely help her do anything. And she was running her fingers off. And because of that, she would always just like serve the food on paper plates because, she didn't want to have to wash 30 dishes after Thanksgiving. So we just ate on paper plates with disposable forks and knives. And I'm like, yeah, that really makes me feel welcome. Like how fast can you eat and get out the door and I can clean up and it doesn't look like you were ever here.
And my older sister took that to the next nth degree, like not a click more, like 100.
Like you'd be eating and she'd be pulling the plate out.
You're done with that, right? Because she just couldn't wait to get it all thrown away, cleaned up, washed, and get you out the freaking door.
Yeah.
It's my sister. We're at mom's house. I can remember for years being sort of shamed because I would fall asleep like in the recliner or on the couch at my mom's house at a holiday or something. I've only worked like 90 hours this week. We got 3 little kids, under 5. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little sleepy. I'm home. What's the issue here?
So the first time we got to host Thanksgiving dinner or Christmas, I don't remember which one it was, and I used the china, and they were like, "What? What? Like we have kids, and who's gonna wash it all?
What if they break it?" I'm like, whatever.
I'm like, I don't know, but my kids will help, and many hands make light work, and it was fun. And did I have some dishes left the next day? Yes, I still did. But a lot of that time that you spend washing up and cleaning up, and like you have some of your best conversations over those times, so.
And it's, I know it's a barrier. And for most people, they go, it's just easier for me to do it. But it's not building community and it's not discipling people in certain ways. I can remember one time with some of you know who the Vanderstelts are, right? We lived right around the corner from them as we started Soma together, untold hours, and our families were just behind it. And I remember one point, we had already multiplied out and we weren't in the same missional community, but I remember Janie starting to get a little wore down with the pace of community life and how often they were doing meals and people around. Fair enough. She got 3 little kids. And she was, particularly in this case, she was getting upset that people were wanting to be family and help, but then she could never find the dishes, like they were all being put away weird places. It would take her twice as long to make dinner, or they weren't loading the dishwasher the way she liked it. No. Forks go this way, plates turn, And so Jeff just took everybody and said, hey, you guys are so great at wanting to help. You all want to help, right? And they're like, yeah. What would really help Janie is if she could take like 10 minutes and just explain a few things, it would be a blessing to her. Not that it's a huge deal, brothers and sisters. However, to really show her your love, if you could load the dishwasher in a way that she prefers, and we can explain to you, here's where the plates go and here's where the pans go, be helpful. No one had a problem with it. And after that, the problem was solved in a sense. It was just treating people like family until they've been there enough times to figure it out accidentally. Or you could just say this. When we were on our little retreat this last week, we were making salami eggs for the whole crew the last morning there. And some of you know what that is. Some of you don't. If you've listened to anyway, that recipe's all out there. But they were all like, oh man, Team K, we're going to do salami eggs. And so we were explaining everything to everybody and they were all doing their little jobs. And I had to go to one of the sisters just real briefly. And I said, okay, 3 dozen eggs, crack them, poke, stir, right? You want to do the eggs. Yeah. But she starts cracking them on the counter. Well, we come from food service, owning a restaurant. You don't crack eggs on your counter because that's egg everywhere and salmonella. I said, hey, whoops. I said, hey, sis, you're doing a great job there. Crack them on the bowl. That way, if they drips, it drips in the bowl, whatever. And that way we don't have to wonder where all the drips went on the floor and down the front of the cupboards and all that. She just looked at me like, okay. Now, I don't know, internally, she might have been like, F you, bro. I don't think so. That's not her heart, because we have a lot of relational trust, right? There's been a lot of invitation banked with them. But I didn't have fear to do that either because I also that's how I wanted to see it done. But also I wanted her to learn that that's a safer, healthier way to do it, right? Why not? What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with it. But some people it'd be easier not to. But not if you love people, you speak the truth, right? And you're free. And then she could also say, screw you, I've done it this way a million times. She gets to. And I'd go, all right, well then, just make sure you clean the front of the the counter in the cabin. So, like with sterilized water or whatever. I don't know. You get to. I get to, she gets to. You know what I mean? And that's part of being family with people and the reality of that.
and the other part of that, which I love, is like it is like what you're doing with your kids. And I love how being a family, like I mean, our missional community is a family, and it's kind of like what you would do with your kids. We're intentionally using every opportunity, whether it's sitting down over a meal or going out and serving or hanging out and having fun. You're using all these opportunities to continue to treat people like family and like your kids. You don't just change their diapers for 30 years. You teach them to go to the bathroom, and you teach them how to flush the toilet and how to wash their hands, and you also teach them how to help clean up and how to cook and how to make their beds. There's like a million things you're teaching people all along the way. And so me taking the time to teach people how to go grocery shopping and find good deals and how to make decent food, like easily and cheaply. And like some people, we had to teach them, like, hey, you really kind of need to take a shower every day. Like we had to I mean, I'm telling you, like way back machine.
Not like once, like lots of, young men that were like, I want to be married so bad. You want to be married, huh? You want to marry what? Like a woman? Yeah, a woman. Well, women marry men. And right now you live like an eternal baby and you smell like one. So let's start working on the stuff in your life that a woman might actually want to marry. But right now, I would tell all the women in our community, don't marry this baby. Anyway, that's part of being family. Yeah. Trust me, like one of the guys we're thinking of in our head, when he lived with our family for years, and he was raised by wolves and apart from all his siblings, and our daughters treated him like family. They were hard on him. They changed his life, though. He's married to a beautiful woman now, and praise God, right? It's just. And
that's the way I feel, when I look at these, so many people who've just had no one helping them move, helping them learn, helping them be, and it's not just even in the practical. I mean, it's in the spiritual too. It's all the same, and it's all the process of. So part of treating people like family, let's say when they're in your home, and that's when we have that tendency to like treat them like a guest, right? Even the language matters. Like you just said the word host, because it drips out of us. Mm-hmm. But that when we call that, like, who's hosting, it puts us in this mode versus like, where are we doing this week? Whose house are we doing? You know what I mean? So it's not evil if you use the word host or whatever. I'm just saying, like, we get to be careful with how our language does create culture. Mm-hmm. Cami, you said, we couldn't go to church Sunday. It's like, you never can go to church. Right? And everybody goes, I know, whatever. But it's identity issue. That's, you know what I mean? And so we are the church.
We get to grow in that and go forward. So part of how we, start to treat people and then disciple people to be like and treat others like family is in our language. Language creates culture, but it also shows up in really little ways. Like always let people bring something, because when you say, hey, we're doing this, like, well, what can we bring?
It's usually the first question people ask. Be prepared. And
we do it every time. We always go, well, okay, great. What can we bring? And I always say probably 8 at least out of 10 times. Oh, nothing. Well, you're going to bring something anyway, right? I don't know. Most people, you don't show up empty-handed because that's not what family does. So you're going to bring something. Why not go ahead and give people, like, treat them like family and go, well, we're having this and that. Well, what do you think goes good with that? What does your family like to have with that? Well, we have this cheesy potato thing we like to do. That'd be awesome. Is that a hassle, or could you do that? No, I'd love to bring that. Great. I'm great.
And let me just say that's just inviting them into 2 things. One is that you've asked them a question, you're getting to know a little of their story, and you're giving them the opportunity to bring their story and them get to explain that story and everybody to get to know them a little bit
connected
more,
to that recipe. Connected. Like, where'd you learn that? Oh, my grandma used to make, whatever. That's all just part of how family works. Mm-hmm. It also is, so let people bring stuff. We witnessed this like at a very, very high level once. We were at the Breen's house, Mike and Sally Breen's house, and they were having a whole bunch of people in for training, but like just opening up their home for the evening. And Sally gave every single person, said, hey, what can we do to help? Which she had it all nailed down. Okay. Like literally out in their garage, they had this huge shelf of crock pots and she'd bring them all in. She had them all cooking on the counter. They were very good at community life, but every person who said, hey, what can I do to help? She invented something. I'm going to put you on ice patrol. Make sure everybody gets ice in their glasses, whatever they need. It might have been a big thing, a little thing, whatever. Don't fear.
She didn't actually even wait for people to ask. She would just grab somebody, and she didn't necessarily know them like well.
But that's what family does. There's a guy in our community at a recent holiday thing. He walks in, I don't know if it was Christmas maybe, And he's like, what's up? What can I do? And I'm like, you know what? We had brunch this morning. We're getting ready for the big meal. It's kind of a mess. Could you grab a broom and sweep the kitchen up real quick for me? He's like, I'm on it. So he was stoked. This guy's like a super well-known bartender in our town, but like part of our community. And he's sweeping away. And our first floor is all like contiguous hardwood. And it's like a great room. So pretty soon he is sweeping everything. He's down the hall. He's sweeping under the couch. And and I said, hey, bro, just the kitchen is all I needed. He goes, I'm sweeping, bro. I got it. He wanted to, you know what I mean? And that guy's part of everything. And his sister and nephew just moved out of our daughter's house. They were there for, I don't know, 6 weeks or whatever in between, losing their house and all this. It's just how community works. And everything we did over at Kristen's house the last 6 weeks with them was treat them like family. Exactly. Normalcy. Let people take out your trash. Let them sweep. Let them bring food. Let them help load the dishwasher. If you don't like the way they're loading it, go, hey, you know what? I know there's this, eternal debate, like forks up or handle up, Okay. By the way, it's handle up, just so you know. 100% it is. Because otherwise, when you unload the dishwasher, you do what I just did. And then you grab the freaking fork that they're going to eat off of and you touch it. So I even saw that on the Today Show once.
As somebody who owned a restaurant, I'm just telling you it is.
Yeah.
It is.
I know we're thinking, well, I want it up so the water can spray it more. Those baskets were made to be sprayed from anyway, you do what you want. Anyway, but at our house, we're going to load it, handle up. Yeah. Anyway. But you see, it's just the normalcy of treating people like family. And if there's mess, a lot of people we coach like, this is really hard for me. I got to have my house super, super tightened down before I can have anybody in. Well, why? So then who's this event about ultimately? Me. But it's not about you. It's about God and his glory. And God sees that as your brothers and sisters. And he don't really care about the dust bunnies or the box in the corner or, oh my God, there's laundry to be folded sitting on the corner of the couch still. Whatever, like whatever. We just want to impress that upon you. Wherever you're at with that comfort level, that's where you're at. But you get to start to treat people like family, not like guests. And I'll tell you what happens when we start to do this in our normal lives and everyday lives. And when you're hosting like an open table type of thing, like a high invitation, low challenge neighborhood event that's just ongoing. That's like a superpower during that time because people are checking you out. And when they come around and they feel like family.
Or when your house isn't perfect, when they walk in and it doesn't look like a hotel room, that you rented or whatever.
You ever been to someone's house where you're afraid to sit down because it's so perfect and clean? And why would you have white carpet? You know what I mean? Like, what were you thinking with the white carpet? The lines are still in it from vacuuming. You're like, yeah, okay, nothing wrong with that. Just know it's going to get messed up tonight. And so here's what happens when we treat people that way and our heart kind of clicks where that's the mode I'm in. Not only is the pressure off because you got a lot more help. People are bringing food, they're helping clean up, and they're folding your laundry if need be. They're folding your pastor's underwear, whatever is needed, right? The pressure gets off once you get past it, like it feels awkward. Okay, well, we're growing in that. The other thing is you start to live that way outside. Like even last week on our vacation, I was just struck by some of our own language, but also because we were with folks we've been coaching for quite a while, the way they just engaged like a bartender or someone at the grocery store, at the meat counter or whatever, when we were getting, you know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't like I'm treating that person like someone who works at the store. So i.e. a slave, they're getting paid, blah, blah. You're treating them like family. Well, when you live in a community, I'm telling you, people notice and the word gets out. And when we ran Chakabra, Tina ran our restaurant for 8 years, breakfast all day, the way we treated and talked to staff, the way we treated our customers, how many of those customers got invited over for Thanksgiving or to a family barbecue, or all of our staff being at our house and some of our staff staying with us and other staff staying in some of our rentals, but for free. And the word gets out. Trust me, even in our neighborhood here, which is very much different than in Tacoma and Gig Harbor, it's quite wealthier. Our daughter, over time, who has her own little salon, has picked up a ton of clients in the neighborhood. And early on, so this is like humble brag kind of in Christ, but just to prove the point, she said like, Mom, Dad, like all the neighbors love you guys. They just love you, and their kids love you because they cut the kids' hair too, and all that. So we'll praise God for that, honey. But it's partly because we treat them like family. It's not like because we're doing something so freaking amazing. But the reputation does get out. We were just walking around last week. There's a new neighbor that moved in the cul-de-sac. It's just like 5 houses away. We hadn't met them yet. There were some other neighbors who, I was thinking of this, Jim, earlier, you want to have a patio out front. These people, their house, they have a huge back patio and all this, but they built this small little stone kind of slate patio between.
Seriously, it's like 10 by 10 between the two houses.
Between
out
the
front.
two driveways on the sidewalk. And last year they put out 2 chairs and a little table to have drinks. And they'd be out there all the time. This year they have 4 just jammed in there.
Adirondack chairs jammed in.
And the new neighbor and her kids were over. And then all the other neighbors were introducing us. And it was like this glowing report of who we were. And I'm like, well, I'm so stoked you see us that way. Like, I think we're pretty normal, but we treat people like family. That's all I'm saying. So word gets out and you start to live this way. And then you never know who else in the neighborhood's talking to who else. Or you're treating somebody that way at the deli, and it turns out that's your neighbor's daughter that you've been trying to get over forever, but they haven't been over. So I could go on. I could tell you story after story after story. So what's your thoughts on how this feels? Do you have any pushback, any theological differences, any disagreements, any I agree, but I have fear over it? Like, what's your thoughts on treating people like family? Let that flow out of our identity and how God sees them as true versus treating them like guests when they're around or even when you're out and about.
Okay. So I have a group of friends that I've just been kind of talking to them about how we're trying to have people over and live missionally in our neighborhood. And one of them, she said, well, you just got to be really careful about your money. You'll end up spending so much money because people will expect you to feed them all the time. And so I told her, no, that's not what we're doing. Like, we're telling people, bring, something to put on the grill, and we're just going to treat people like family. And she said, well, that's not what that means to me. Not everybody thinks that family means that you bring stuff and share, because in my family, that's not what we do. In my family, we go to my mom's house. My mom does everything. And we might like send some money or something because she'll feed like a huge number
nice
of people.
family. Yeah.
I know. But I thought that was interesting. I was like, I just assume when I say we're treating people like family that everybody would pitch in, but she just said that's not how.
But that's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay. You don't even have to correct her.
Yeah.
You can just model a different way.
And that's the thing. Sometimes we have to say, in our family, we all help cook and we all help clean up, or whoever cooks doesn't have to help clean up, by the way, that's, that's the other rule. I kind of like that. My mom started that a long time ago. I don't like that rule. He doesn't like that rule.
Just kidding.
But everybody kind of has their kind of family way of being family. Well, when you learn how to be a healthy family, right, with God as their father and Jesus as their brother, and you're learning new ways to do that, then you can also say, in our family, this is the way we do this. And then somebody goes, oh, well, that's kind of a cool way of being family. I mean, that's how we've learned.
Listen, you're going to get lots of pushback on this because people live not out of their identity. They live due to be. That's the beast. Sure. That's the world. That's the beast. And so you don't have to like verbally correct them. You can go, well, we're trying to live like that. And people seem to respond. But, whatever floats your boat kind of thing. Like, let them see it and experience the difference. But you're going to get that kind of fear pushback. And but what about boundaries? And here's another one that's going to come up. Well, what if you're having neighbors over and your kids are around? Well, yeah, our kids live here. Well, what if there's creepers? There is creepers. I don't know. There's always been creepers. We're careful, but we don't. You know what I mean? Like, we trust God, and just like we love people more than our budget, and some months we did spend a whole lot on having people over. But as the community kind of grew and started to be more like family, turned out it was the opposite. Everybody brings over like beverages to drink and food and leaves it over. And they leave, and every week our refrigerator's full of leftovers, and I got more beer and wine than we know what to do with. Okay, you know what I mean? It starts to go the other way. Either way, though, got to work it out. God, if he's calling us, then he's always going to meet that need. Listen, we've had stuff happen. Like we've been robbed. We've had stuff stolen. I'm thinking about my favorite leather jacket that just left the house one night, but whoever has it, I love them more than my leather jacket, And so I like my jacket back, but probably not happening. We get to. You're going to get lots of pushback, and that's okay. People are where they're at. Well, I sure hope that is helpful. And again, you can go back and you can even dig deeper in this and hear more teaching if you want to go back to episode 157 or episode 189. But it seems pretty apparent, right, that life in community on mission is messy. But it's a beautiful mess. And just like we see people in messy situations differently when they're our family members than when they're someone else that's not, once we start to see and treat everyone like part of the family, our heart response to this glorious mess will shift too. Like I've said many times before, this is not the way we live because we're supposed to. We live this way and treat others this way because we get to. We get to love them and pursue them and treat them the way God does. And that shows them what he's like. God is pursuing this relationship of trust with us and with them, and he uses us to pursue them. It's beautiful. It's powerful. Well, I want to give you the big 3 takeaways from today's topic. You don't want to miss these 3 principles. And if you want a printable PDF of the big 3, you can get that as a free download by going to everydaydisciple.com/big3. everydaydisciple.com/big3. Now, here we go. Here's the big 3 for this week. Don't miss this if nothing else. Number 1, God sees every person on earth as one of his children. So that makes them all your brothers and sisters in sort of the big eternal sense. Some of his kids are far from him or don't know and trust him yet, but that's why we're here. We get to start showing them how much our heavenly dad loves them and desires a relationship of trust with them. Number 2, God sees you as his beloved child and part of his forever family. He's your perfect father and Jesus is your brother. Do you believe this? Regardless of how imperfect your earthly family may have been, we have a perfect eternal family, and our position in that family is now secured by Jesus himself. It's when we start believing this and believing it's true for us, for others, that we'll start to see and treat others as part of the family as well. And number 3, begin to see your house as a tool and resource for building community and the kingdom and family. Viewing your home not as a refuge or a hiding place, but rather as God's house. This changes our view and the ethos of how we treat others who join us there. Start having a weekly open table of some sort where anyone and everyone gets invited in regularly and treated like a member of the family, not as a guest. Treating others like they are family is an extension of the good news to them. A place at your table is a place at our dad's table. All right. Powerful stuff. Hope you'll take that to heart. Hope you'll let God move you towards that. Everything we've talked about today. And again, if you're interested in learning more about this and learning a full framework for discipleship and mission, I'd love to set up a short Zoom call with you to talk about what we offer in the way of coaching and mentorship. Again, Tina and I do this as couple, and we coach couples. So if you're interested in that, go to everydaydisciple.com/coaching. Love to set up a time we can get together, tell you more, get to know a little bit of your story. All right, now it's time for the brand new Something to Think About segment. I thought it'd be good to kick off this new segment talking about our dad's name. We were just talking about family, so I thought it'd be good to talk about our dad's name. I found that most of us don't actually know our Heavenly Father's name. That's weird. His name is not God. God's name is not God. He is God. The name he gave Moses to tell his people, and that's us now, is I am that I am. In Exodus 3:15 there, he says, this is my name forever, the name you shall call me from generation to generation. And so we say it that way in English, I am that I am. But in the language that God spoke that, in Hebrew, to Moses, he says, this is my name forever. Ayah, Ashir, Ayah. Yeah, that's our Father's name. Ayah, Ashir, Ayah. It's awesome. And you can use his name when talking to him. Does God want us to know him intimately? Yeah. And call him by his name? Of course, he just said so. So try it out in your prayer time and call your Father by his name. Ayah, Ashir, Ayah. So, by the way, when someone says, oh my God, this is delicious, or oh my God, your kids are beautiful, they're not using the Lord's name in vain. His name's not God. That's some messed up old Sunday school stuff, so you can relax. Our Father, God, has a name, and it is Ayah, Ashir, Ayah. Okay, There you go. Hope that's a cool, fun thing. That's something to think about for you. Now, time's up for today. I hope you'll join me next week as we talk about 7 challenges to cultural diversity in the church. Seeing diverse believers walk and work and worship together as a family is a beautiful thing. However, there will be obstacles to overcome as we pursue that. I hope you'll be here for that. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for joining us today. For more information on this show and to get loads of free discipleship resources, visit everydaydisciple.com. And remember, you really can live with the spiritual freedom and relational peace that Jesus promised every day.